The world was fading away, and only one person could stand against the oncoming ruin. That person is Kim Jin-woo, our prota, who was summoned to the world of Arsalan and ended up becoming a legendary archmage. Despite all his incredible efforts, he feels like nothing is ever enough. Everything around him was being consumed by the creeping blight of destruction. This phenomenon advances slowly, devouring the planet of Arsalan piece by piece. About 90% of the entire planet's territory had already been wiped out, and the few surviving kingdoms can only hold the line thanks to a special magical barrier created by the Prota. However, the pure monastones sustaining the barrier are running on empty and will last 3 years at the absolute most. And without that protection, the monsters will overrun everything, destroying every single living soul left in this world. Jinwoo feels completely frustrated about being summoned to a doomed world, even if he is the legendary master of the magic tower. He smiles ironically, telling them to drop those fancy titles since the whole world is basically in ruins anyway. His disciple Darius, an elite elf, agrees but warns him once again about the dangers of facing the blight after dark. He complains about his disciple's nagging and asks for updates, only to be told that an emergency order has just arrived. He knows the situation is desperate, especially since he is the only one capable of moving freely through the corrupted zone. The natives of Arsalan cannot last long in that perilous area, as the darkness eventually consumes their very souls. Fortunately, Jinwoo is completely immune to this corruption because he is the only inhabitant who came from another world. His unique soul protects him from the decay, and clearing out the source of this rot is exactly what makes him stronger and stronger. He reflects on his limits in solitude, while Darius mentions that only a legendary hero could endure such a heavy burden. The elf asks if she should send another notice of absence for the official summons, and the master tells her to do exactly that. She jokes around, telling him not to worry because if his body gives out, they can always bring him back in a brand new vessel. The disciple threatens to make his next body a cute anime girl if he takes too many risks, and he surprisingly thinks that might not be so bad. She gives him a bored look, teasing that her master's tastes are definitely quite peculiar and unconventional. In the end, she gently asks him to get some real rest, and the mage just lets out a grunt of agreement. He remembers his past life back on Earth, where he worked non-stop, putting in endless overtime and surviving solely on coffee. Now in the world of Arsalan, he had to craft spells and fight tooth and nail against the terrible corruption of the blight. Pausing to think, the Prota realizes he has never had a single moment of genuine peace in his entire life. Facing a barrier that will collapse in just a few years and doom the planet, he feels utterly overwhelmed by all that weight. With so much exhaustion piling up, his biggest wish right now is simply to drop everything and finally take a break. Suddenly, an incredibly bright light begins to radiate directly from his own hand, catching his attention. The intense glow envelops Jinwoo's entire body, leaving the Archmage completely baffled and surprised by the phenomenon. A colossal pillar of spiritual energy erupts from the ground, piercing the heavens and lighting up the entire surrounding forest. The Archmage stands frozen in absolute shock at the massive amount of power manifesting right before him. He feels an absolute, overwhelming force, realizing his soul has just awakened on a unique, transcendental level. The irony is that he tried to achieve this power for decades without success, and now that he finally gave up on everything, it finally arrived. He decides to test this mysterious new ability and extends his hand to see what he is truly capable of doing now. A massive, swirling, dark portal begins to open right in front of him, responding to his absurd new magical energy. It is the Portal of Souls, a pathway connected directly to his soul's original homeland that can now be crossed. He is amazed to find that his spiritual projection can pass through the portal, leaving his physical body safely behind. The system information reveals that this magic allows him to manifest his immense spiritual power in his homeland, at will. Without a second thought and tired of everything, Jinwoo decides to take a leap of faith and cross the spiritual gateway immediately. The portal explodes in a blinding flash of spiritual energy as he completes his transition between worlds. The gateway suddenly opens up in the sky of a modern metropolis filled with skyscrapers. Startling the people down on the street floating in his soul form, the Archmage looks around, trying to process exactly where he has just landed. He looks at the massive modern tower on the horizon and is shocked to realize that 100 years have passed since he left. He notices people using regular smartphones from his era and wonders if he traveled through time or if the dimensions split apart. Driven by anxiety, the mage's spirit darts at high speed through the city skyscrapers in search of his old home. He reaches the exact location, but finds only a busy avenue surrounded by new modern buildings and cars. Seeing the massive unfamiliar building standing there, he realizes with sadness that his old home has completely vanished with time. He realizes that Kim Jin-woo no longer exists in this world, feeling a pang in his chest because every trace of his past has been erased. Since Earth's mana levels are extremely low, he needs to act fast and find an empty vessel to inhabit to survive. In his spiritual form, Jin-woo flies rapidly over the city streets, searching for a compatible signal. Suddenly, he senses a powerful resonance coming from somewhere nearby, completely catching his attention. The mage notices that a mysterious energy is radiating directly from a massive mansion on top of the hill. Without hesitating for a single second, he decides to enter the property to investigate up close. The moment he passes through the wall, he comes across something shocking that puts him on high alert. On the bed lies an unconscious young man, hooked up to medical monitors that suddenly begin to flatline. Jin-woo approaches the bedside and closely observes the boy's body, whose heart has just stopped beating around the bed. Family members begin to weep in despair, realizing the young man has passed away. The doctor laments the situation while the boy's grandfather falls into despair, crying out for his grandson named Jin-woo. The mage notices the machines are still running and senses an unusual energy hovering over that empty vessel. He realizes that the residual life force is simply too strong to fade away just like that. The boy turns out to be Lee Jin-woo, the grandson of a major conglomerate owner and a young prodigy who unfortunately fell gravely ill. The Archmage concludes that the boy's soul has completely moved on and that the body will soon stop breathing for good. He decides to use his power to take over the empty body, knowing that restoring its health will be an easy task. Jin-woo's spirit begins to descend slowly, merging with the perfect vessel he just discovered. The Archmage's powerful energy flows through the boy's veins, filling every single corner with transcendental strength. Right before the shocked eyes of everyone in the room, a glowing blue magical aura envelops the young man's bed. Suddenly, the boy's eyes slowly snap open, revealing that the possession was a complete success. The young man sits up in bed, letting out a sigh of relief as he realizes the transfer process worked smoothly. The grandfather is completely speechless and bewildered to see his grandson, who had just passed, moving around normally. The old man rushes forward and gives him a tight hug, crying tears of joy, believing he has just witnessed a true miracle. The entire family joins in on the hug, celebrating emotionally and thanking the heavens for this impossible recovery. Jin-woo feels completely suffocated by all this sudden affection and asks for some space, prompting his grandfather to quickly back everyone off. Later on, he lies down with his arms wide open on his massive bed, enjoying the absolute silence to unwind. He thinks about how chaotic that family is, but understands that their dramatic reaction to seeing him return to life makes perfect sense. With his body recovering and a wealthy life ahead of him, he figures spending some time like this won't be bad at all. However, he remembers that his other world is still in grave danger, marching straight toward absolute destruction. He tries to brainstorm a way to destroy the core of the Blight, which keeps spawning endless waves of monsters. The mage wonders if modern weapons from this world, like tanks and armored vehicles, would be useful in that war. He quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that not even tactical strikes would work if the hidden cores aren't shattered first. He sighs in frustration at the lack of answers, and decides to grab a handheld gaming console lying next to him on the bed. With the console in hand, our prota decides to play for a bit to clear his head and distract his exhausted mind. He presses the power button, and the screen of the small device lights up, revealing a bright startup screen. Jin-woo recalls how much he loved this classic dragon RPG game during his past life as a game developer. Sitting up in bed, he enjoys the classic premise of gathering heroes from all over the world to defeat ultimate evil. At that exact moment, he starts daydreaming about how amazing it would be if thousands of heroes could rise to save Arsalan. When he sees the option to summon a second hero on the screen, a brilliant and bold idea flashes through his mind. He stops playing abruptly, his eyes widening as he realizes the massive opportunity he has sitting right in his hands. Letting the console drop onto the bed, he realizes he can use his magic to summon real people from Earth to act as heroes. His plan is to use the power of the Soul Portal to bring humans who are completely immune to the Blight straight to the other world. A sly smirk crosses his face as he plans to make these people think that Arsalan is nothing more than a brand new virtual reality game. He intends to build a whole immersive combat narrative so that players will fight and clear Arsalan from destruction with his game development. Background: his immense magical power and his new family's massive wealth, he has everything he needs. Determined and with a 3-year deadline, he decides to launch his ambitious project to save both worlds. Shortly after, everyone gathers around a luxurious giant dining table for a lavish family meal. The grandfather pampers his grandson affectionately, telling him he can ask for absolutely anything he wants from now on. Seizing the perfect opportunity, Jinwoo says with a smile that there is something very important he wants to do. Worried about the boy's health, his grandfather freezes for a moment, fearing he wants to dive right back into overstudying. He reminds him that pure exhaustion almost took his life last time, but the young man quickly shakes his head to deny it. With absolute certainty, the young man reveals to everyone that his current dream is to start working on game development. Everyone at the table is completely stunned and shocked by the young man's sudden announcement about making video games. The grandfather stammers emotionally, asking if he means those flashy digital games, making Jinwoo a bit nervous. Suddenly, the old man gives a massive thumbs up with tears in his eyes, showing total and absolute support for his grandson. The other relatives celebrate happily, saying that the young man has finally found a normal hobby for someone his age. The grandfather weeps with joy and asks the uncle if the family conglomerate happens to have a tech company in that sector available. The old man decides to give the company to his grandson as a get-well gift to do whatever he wants with it, leaving the young man surprised and grateful. The mage celebrates internally, since owning a tech company will make it incredibly easy to build a virtual world for the public. He sincerely thanks his grandfather and promises he will give his absolute best to make the project a massive success. Back in his original body in Arsalan, the Archmage resumes his plans to structure the core rules of this new game, sitting on his throne in the Magic Tower. He feels relieved to see that his disciple kept his physical body completely pristine. He explains that he placed a spell on his Earth body to control it from afar using his handheld gaming console. With everything properly set up, he decides that now is the perfect time to start writing the game's official lore and script. The Archmage heads over to the tower's immense library, where he finds another elf hyper-focused on writing at her desk. She is working incredibly hard, surrounded by towering piles of books. Without even noticing her master's silent approach, Jinwoo suddenly asks if she is working on a new storyline, and the elf gets startled out of her wits, letting out a loud yelp. This is the elf Tia, the greatest storyteller in the world, who complains about him sneaking up on her from behind like a ghost. He apologizes amiably and praises the dedication of the renowned author, who is always incredibly busy with her masterpieces. She explains that she is gathering her old tales to give suffering people a place of escape during these dark, difficult times. The mage lets out a warm laugh, finding that attitude very noble and perfectly in line with her kind-hearted personality. He praises Tia's good heart and then pitches the idea of a story about a hero summoned from a completely different world. The Prota theorizes on how to motivate an outside warrior who has absolutely no logical obligation to fight for their planet. Tia listens intently and says that to attract someone who is just looking for fun, you first need to give them a sense of home. With a mischievous smile, she suggests that the best way to do this is by using a blend of romance and absolute tragedy. She imagines the hero falling deeply in love with a beautiful companion and forming strong bonds, only to lose her right after. With an almost psychotic look in her eyes, she yells enthusiastically that the warrior's ideal partner needs to have a truly tragic end. The elf begins writing like a maniac, laughing in a bizarre way while planning to use pure vengeance as the main engine of the plot. She keeps suggesting brutal ends for friends and mentors, leaving Jinwoo quite startled by his writer's dark, hidden side. Despite the shock, the mage smiles, realizing that despair and the desire for payback are the perfect engagement tools for the game. With a tragic and thrilling plot, players will feel highly motivated to fight bravely entirely on their own accord. Tia mutters in sheer excitement, saying she can't wait to see the hero weep in agony over the suffering she has written down. The mage clears his throat to snap her back to reality, and she apologizes embarrassedly for getting way too carried away again. He says it's perfectly fine, and reveals that if the plan works, hundreds of thousands of people will read her story. When he mentions the audience could easily pass millions, the author freezes with emotion, trembling with pure anticipation. She hugs herself in pure ecstasy, visualizing her literary works reaching such an astronomical number of readers. The elf becomes completely obsessed, claiming she would make any sacrifice for it, leaving the Archmage surprised by her sheer intensity. The mage plans an initial beta test with about 3,000 people before expanding the project progressively worldwide. He explains he will give players real incentives to dedicate themselves to combat, and Tia thinks the concept is worthy of an epic novel. The Prota selects a village devastated by the Blight to serve as the starting area and tutorial zone for the new heroes. Seeing the elf daydreaming happily about the drama of that village, he decides to leave her to work in peace for a while. Since Arsalan is a real world, all he needs to do is overlay the fictional narrative onto reality to create a functional, groundbreaking game. The mage knows the script alone won't convince the corporate staff back on Earth, and they might think young Jinwoo lost his mind. He plans to introduce ultra-high-tech virtual reality goggles to support that flawless, total sensory immersion. Since the Soul Portal is still exclusive to him, the initial plan is to create a hyper-realistic promotional trailer for the game. With that in mind, he realizes he needs to gather some local natives to act out scenes for the gameplay demonstration video. Using telepathy, the Archmage contacts his loyal subordinate Hasman, who was busy tending to the gardens. He orders the man to round up 2 other servants and meet him immediately at a nearby castle to kick off the plan. Next, the visual shows the majestic castle of Rheinjord rising imposingly beneath the clear skies of that stable region. A glowing vortex of magic opens up on the spot, and the Archmage steps out of his teleportation, completely ready for action. Upon arriving at the castle, he is greeted with deep reverence by his trusted servants who were already waiting for him. A very kind elder leader, highly respected by the townsfolk, steps forward and exclaims enthusiastically that he took perfect care of everything in his absence. Next, the other elder bows devoutly, wishing the blessings of the goddess of light upon their beloved sovereign. The mage thanks them all for their hard work, but politely asks the old man to lower the religious emblem as it creeps him out a bit. Knight Captain. Haina steps up proudly, declaring she is fully prepared to lay down her life for the kingdom of Arsalan. Jinwoo looks over the group and thinks that while Haina would make an amazing protagonist, the butler's face looks way too much like a final boss. With a clear vision, the young Archmage flashes a sly smirk as he assigns the ideal roles for each of his loyal servants. He asks Hasman about his proficiency with dark magic, and the butler responds with extreme modesty and humility. The mage holds out some dark, mysterious robes, ordering the 2 elders to change into them immediately. They look absolutely horrified when they see that the outfits visually transform them into a sinister dark wizard and a shadowy priest. The devout elder weeps, shouting that this is absolute heresy, while Jinwoo chuckles, saying the outfit suits him perfectly. Right after, the Prota turns his attention to Captain Haina to figure out the absolute best visual aesthetic for her character design. She is already wearing an extremely heavy, exaggerated suit of metal armor that covers her entire body in a highly impractical way. The mage hands her a much lighter, form-fitting outfit, telling her to put it on for her specific promotional role in the game. The warrior feels extremely embarrassed and hesitates, but her master firmly insists that she must wear the new gear. With a dramatic and serious expression, the Archmage practically begs, claiming she must wear this for the absolute future of Arsalan moments later. Shy footsteps are heard approaching, as Haina finally decides to step out of the dressing room, looking totally self-conscious. She re-emerges wearing the lightweight armor that accentuates her silhouette, leaving the Archmage completely awestruck. Haina timidly questions if this can even legally be called armor, but he assures her that the aesthetic is absolutely flawless. He comically explains that according to his laws of fantasy magic, a female warrior's defense stat is directly proportional to her visual exposure. Analyzing the costumed group, the mage feels the composition for the game's promotional poster is almost perfect, but it's missing one thing. He plans to place a delicate, fragile, holy maiden right next to the warrior, and considers calling the famous Saint Tabesa for the role. The problem is that the 200-year-old saint is a very wrinkled elderly lady who looks nothing like the idealized anime trope. While mulling over this difficult choice, he hears cheerful voices of children running around and playing nearby in the courtyard. 2 kids run past excitedly, pursued by a young woman with horns and wings who is desperately trying to get them to stop immediately. Catching sight of the Archmage, the little ones run toward him happily, completely ignoring all safety warnings. This turns out to be the succubus Irie, who approaches completely exhausted, apologizing for the kids' undisciplined behavior in the castle. The mage observes her in silence for a moment, and suddenly a brilliant new idea pops into his head to solve his casting problem. With a massive smile on his face, he points directly at Aerie and declares that she will be the perfect holy maiden for his new game. The young woman panics, reminding him she is a literal succubus designed for seduction, but he insists that hilarious contrast makes her perfect. Ignoring her funny complaints, he claps his hands together with deep satisfaction, ready to officially kick off the filming process. The entire cast takes their positions fully costumed, and the Archmage asks if everyone is ready to begin acting out their scenes sometime later. He gathers his followers in the throne room and once again asks them to drop the overly exaggerated titles. His loyal disciple kneels before the throne and reports that all 130 mages of the tower have been properly assembled. However, the elf narrows her eyes with extreme suspicion as she notices the eccentric outfits of the people standing behind her master. She questions why everyone is dressed so bizarrely, and the mage calmly replies that they are simply doing a bit of role play. He holds up a glowing magical orb with a smile, asserting that this little acting game is going to save the entire planet. Before the entire assembly, the leader solemnly proclaims that his soul has recently awakened, reaching a whole new echelon of power. He reveals he can now open the portal of souls to connect dimensions, and everyone celebrates happily at their master's great evolution. He explains his master plan to use this dimensional rift to bring powerful heroes from another world to fight their battles for them. The mage decrees that the new and singular task of everyone present in the tower will be to help these new heroes get established. He hands the magical orbs to the leaders, explaining that they contain the promotional trailer filmed by the group. Jinwoo gives detailed video editing instructions, telling them to add more monsters and grand visual effects to the footage. Our prota also demands the addition of immersive sound effects to the film, leaving the managing mage looking incredibly stressed out. He makes it clear that an elite mage should be capable of handling any task and completely ignores their complaints about being tired. The young man smiles confidently, knowing his disciples will find a way to achieve the impossible even under his massive pressure. However, the students analyze the outfits in the video and whisper among themselves that the master and his group look like plushies. They compare the costumes in the video to the blue stuffed kitten that the master used to keep so affectionately in his royal quarters. Aware of this exact comparison, the mage points to the blue plushies and comically decrees that from now on, they are officially dragons. He strikes a cute pose, joking around that these mascots will be the ones responsible for granting all wishes and contracts in the game. Back on Earth, the visuals show the bustling capital city of Seoul bathed in gorgeous sunlight at the start of another busy day. Wearing a sharp, elegant suit and carrying a briefcase, young Jinwoo steps forward confidently, ready to put his plans into action. He thinks to himself happily that thanks to the dedicated help of his mages, the promotional trailer was completed in record time. The moment he steps out of his car, a mysterious man approaches him, asking if he is the brand new CEO of the gaming company. The man enthusiastically introduces himself as Secretary Kim Han-soo, stating it is an absolute honor to finally meet him. They shake hands while the secretary explains he was personally sent by the boy's grandfather to assist him with anything he needs. The secretary notes that he has gathered the most qualified development team, and Jinwoo instructs him to head upstairs immediately. Inside the conference room, head of development, An Yong-seon, stares down at his phone with a tense, worried expression. He reads through the corporate reports indicating that the family's gaming subsidiary is on the brink of bankruptcy and about to be liquidated. The man sighs heavily, worried that the new heir stepping into command is only in his early 20s. He knows that despite his young age, the heir is already renowned in corporate circles as a brilliant, once-in-a-generation genius. The developer recalls that the young man just recovered from a near-fatal health scare right when the secretary swings the door open. With an elegant posture and an incredibly confident look, our prota walks into the room, immediately drawing every eye to him. The team leader freezes for an instant, sensing an absurdly majestic energy radiating from the young president. He gulps in sheer awe, realizing that Lee Jinwoo's natural aura is truly something unbelievable and intimidating. Taking his seat at the head of the table, he introduces himself directly, stating he prefers to skip formal pleasantries with the group. With a sly smirk on his face, the new leader decrees that they kick off the official business meeting at that exact moment. He flips through the paperwork, analyzing the company's recent failures, whose last few releases were all completely canceled. Faced with imminent failure, the head of development stammers nervously, apologizing and taking absolute accountability for the mess. The man falls into despair, thinking he will be fired at any second if the parent company decides to shut down operations for good. However, the employees whisper that starting a fresh project from scratch would be the best option for a triumphant new beginning. The secretary passes out sleek black folders labeled Project Arsalan so everyone can analyze the master's corporate proposal. One of the programmers opens the folder curiously. Reading that mysterious title printed clearly on the planning sheet, Jinwoo explains it is a proposal for a full immersion virtual reality game and asks them to give their honest feedback on the concept. The developers read through it in surprise, commenting that the premise is rock solid, blending a classic genre with modern twists. But the chief points out that virtual reality games aren't mainstream yet, and consumers might reject a brand new hardware device. The young man just smiles confidently, guaranteeing that people are going to become completely obsessed and addicted to what he made. He slams his hand firmly onto the table, asserting with total conviction that he is absolutely not exaggerating a single thing. Standing tall before them, he boldly declares that this new virtual reality game is going to turn the entire world completely upside down. He asks if there is a spacious room in the building and decides to take the entire staff down to the motion capture studio. All the company employees gather outside the massive studio, highly curious to see exactly what is about to be demonstrated inside. Some whisper skeptically, thinking this whole virtual reality pitch is absurd or maybe even some kind of corporate scam. Seeing that the whole team is assembled, the young president orders them to kill the lights to begin the practical test. He kneels down in the center of the pitch-black studio with a small black cube in his hand, politely telling everyone to stand back. Our prota places the metallic device onto the studio floor and announces seriously that the gameplay demonstration is about to begin. The mysterious cube begins to unfold, radiating an intense, brilliant blue light that startles the spectators standing around. A massive magic circle materializes on the studio floor, causing sparks of blue energy to crackle through the air of the room. Within a matter of seconds, a lush, hyper-realistic grassland begins to manifest beneath the feet of the employees in the dark studio. The chief panics as he feels a strong gust of wind and watches real grass grow out of nowhere, unable to comprehend what is happening. He looks up completely dazed, realizing that the ceiling of the room has completely vanished, replaced by a wide-open sky. The entire team falls into a panic upon suddenly finding themselves standing in the middle of an immense green plain under real daylight. A gigantic red dragon appears flying through the skies, letting out a terrifying roar right toward the group standing below. While everyone runs around terrified, screaming about the monster, the master just smiles, telling them to calm down since it's just a hologram. The team leader stammers incredulously, completely unable to accept that this flawless sensory experience is just a 3D hologram. With his arms spread wide before the gorgeous horizon, the heir solemnly declares to his employees that this is Arsalan. The magical landscape reveals itself, filled with flying beasts and beautiful architecture, serving as the perfect backdrop for the project. The programmers ask in shock if this entire world was truly coded by him, and the young man confirms it with genuine modesty. Facing so much admiration, the new president snaps his fingers and asks if they are ready to see the main storyline play out. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently, and deep fissures open up in the grass, terrifying everyone present. The blue sky is overtaken by an eerie reddish darkness as a sinister solar eclipse forms on the plane's horizon. Terrifying skeletal arms burst forth from the cracked earth, reaching up toward the sky right before the eyes of the group. The two elders dressed as villains appear floating in midair, letting out a wicked laugh and ordering the evil forces to attack. The army of the undead advances relentlessly, while the terrible villain mocks them, saying the darkness will corrupt everyone he extends his skeletal hand, proclaiming he will take the hearts of the weak, and orders more dark servants to step forward. One of the programmers asks desperately if all of this is truly just a hologram, and Jinwoo jokes around saying maybe it isn't. Suddenly, an attack grazes right past them, and the head of development yells in terror for everyone to fall back as fast as possible. At that exact moment, the fearless knight, Haina, charges swiftly against the monster horde, sword drawn to defend them with a single powerful swing. She slices multiple monsters clean in half at once, demonstrating her extraordinary strength. A glowing hand appears on the horizon, radiating a comforting holy light, telling everyone to remain completely calm. It is the Holy Maiden floating gracefully through the skies, enveloped in a massive, divine golden glow that lights up the entire field. The divine messenger says in a soft voice that the light will protect everyone, hovering right behind warrior Haina in a majestic display. Seeing the villains get pushed back, the employees cheer loudly, thanking the maiden's blessing and the warrior's courage. Observing their euphoria and literal tears, Jinwoo smiles with satisfaction, noticing everyone fell into the video's perfect immersion. The young archmage flashes a sly smirk, knowing that all his plans are moving along exactly the way he designed them. Standing with his arms crossed under the crimson sky, he feels that the first step for his project's success was masterfully achieved. With a determined look, the young man decides that now the time has come to showcase the grand climax of this incredible demo. On screen, the terrible villain lets out a cruel laugh, celebrating that he has found so many new test subjects for his experiments. He orders his creatures to attack without mercy, to rip all intruders apart, while the monsters roar ferociously, with the monsters closing in. Hyena calls for the maiden's aid, who responds promptly, positioning herself for full combat. Raising her hands to the heavens, the divinity asks everyone to offer up the light in their hearts to fortify the magical barrier. Totally immersed, the staff raises their hands high to donate their energy, causing sparks of static electricity to manifest out of thin air. Warrior Hyena's sword begins to glow intensely, imbued with the full power of the newly generated holy lightning. Letting out a powerful battle cry, she leaps forward fearlessly, delivering a devastating blow directly against the undead horde. With a gaze full of fury and determination, she shouts the name of her world, swearing to defend it until the absolute end. The programmers and corporate staff join in on the chorus, chanting fervently for the kingdom of Arsalan in a moment of pure emotion. She delivers a flashing, decisive strike against the villain, triggering a massive explosion of holy flames all around the arena. Being consumed by the divine fire, the Lich falls into despair, completely unable to accept being defeated by such pure, raw force. A gigantic, blinding detonation of golden light consumes all the darkness in the area, signaling the end of that terrible horde. The villain collapses to the ground, letting out one final, agonizing cry of defeat as his skeletal body disintegrates for good. The other dark priest panics, begging desperately for salvation from his hidden overlord concealed up within the black clouds. But the terrifying shadow leader snaps his fingers, coldly asserting that weak garbage has absolutely no utility in his ultimate plans. The priest is consumed by a wicked purple smoke, letting out an agonizing scream as he is destroyed by his very own master. The audience watches the scene terrified, seeing that the ultimate villain leader did not hesitate to eliminate his own ally. With a menacing gesture, the Shadow Master points directly at the spectators, warning them that now it's every single one of their turns. The terrifying purple mist begins to encircle the entire studio, causing the employees to scatter in a panic, trying to escape. Suddenly, the studio lights snap back on all at once, revealing that everyone is perfectly safe back in the ordinary motion capture room. The team leader opens his eyes, startled, patting his own body down in confusion upon realizing everything was just a flawless simulation. The other employees also sink to the floor, catching their breath and trying to process what they just witnessed. Turning off the device calmly, Jinwoo turns to face them with a smile, fully ready to hear the group's initial feedback. In a friendly tone, the young man asks if they enjoyed the initial demonstration and if they found the concept video convincing. The group rushes toward him excitedly, shouting questions about the tech and begging to see the stunning holy maiden just one more time. The chief adjusts his glasses sheepishly, apologizing for the excessive excitement since it was their very first time stepping into a virtual world. But he quickly adopts a serious tone, questioning if it is truly safe to reveal such an absurdly valuable trade secret to the public. Jinwoo smiles knowingly, remembering that they didn't even believe it themselves before seeing it, and tells them to go ahead and announce the game to the world. The new boss asks if they are ready to join his cause, and everyone bows down, swearing to follow him to the ends of the earth. He celebrates their decision and explains that the advanced artificial intelligence will help them master the basic rules of the new game engine. The group fills with intense motivation, deciding that their objective now won't just be to dominate gaming, but the entire global culture. Raising his fist high, the young leader declares they are going to make history, and the entire team shouts enthusiastically in approval. Shortly after, shocking articles begin popping up all over the internet, announcing that the company is developing something historic. The news spreads like wildfire, revealing in massive headlines that the mysterious project is a revolutionary virtual reality game. Multiple web articles praise the new president as the savior of humanity, who is about to create the ultimate paradise for gamers. But not everyone buys into it, and plenty of comments mock the news, calling it nothing but a rich heir's expensive playground. Jinwoo looks over the negative press inside the research lab and chuckles because nobody actually believes the virtual reality project is real. At that moment, Jinwoo's phone begins to buzz, showing that his grandfather is calling to talk about what happened. He answers his grandfather's call and calmly explains that he only took a quick glance at the mean comments on the internet. The grandfather gets heated over the insults and offers to have the corporate legal team take action, but Jinwoo prefers to just let it go. The old man accepts his grandson's decision and takes the chance to ask how things are progressing with the new tech venture. The young man shares that everything is going smoothly and that they just finished finalizing the prototype for the new virtual reality goggles. While talking to his grandfather, the young man remembers that the fishing mechanics have already been fully programmed into that world. Jinwoo asks if his grandfather enjoys fishing, and the old man starts bragging, telling absurd stories about his legendary past fishing trips. The young man invites him out to fish, but the grandfather chuckles and declines because his back is sore, preferring to just rest up at home. With a clever smile, the young man warns him that he has something incredible to show him and that he is heading over to his house this very second. Night quickly falls over the quiet residence, indicating that Jinwoo has already arrived at the location to deliver his massive surprise. The grandfather looks over the virtual reality prototype goggles, highly curious to test out this new invention created by his own grandson. The young man tells him to just lie back comfortably and put the device on to experience one of the biggest surprises of his life. The old man only intended to humor his grandson, but finds himself highly impressed by the sleek design and superior quality of the prototype. Jinwoo asks if his grandfather is fully prepared, and the elder responds enthusiastically, eager to see the results of the project. The young man says he will see him in the world of Arsalan, and the grandfather presses the power button, activating the virtual reality device. A powerful flash of glowing blue energy takes over the old man's vision, initiating the spiritual transfer process. The grandfather opens his eyes, blinking slowly as he tries to comprehend the brand new physical sensation taking over his entire body. He looks down, astonished at his own rejuvenated hands surrounded by leaves gently falling inside a stunningly real forest. The elder stands up and observes the sunny landscape around him, completely unable to believe the sheer visual perfection of the environment. Suddenly, Jinwoo's voice echoes from among the trees, officially welcoming his grandfather to this new, magical world called Arsalan. The old man gets startled to see his grandson and asks where on earth they are, while the young man explains this is his game's world. The young man presents a magical mirror, revealing that his grandfather's avatar was modeled entirely after his physical appearance from when he was 40 years old. The grandfather stammers in utter shock to see the project was real, and Jinwoo teases him, saying he is the first person to alpha test the new world. The elder notices that his young body doesn't ache anymore, and fills with pure happiness upon feeling such incredible physical vitality. The old man asserts that this tech is out of this world, and asks curiously how his grandson had the time to build something so advanced and flawless. Jinwoo makes up the excuse that he planned out the whole thing while he was in his coma, and the grandfather is awed by his sheer genius. The young man suddenly takes his grandfather's hand to guide him, and the old man asks confused where they are heading in such a massive rush. With a grand smile, Jinwoo reveals they are going fishing, and the landscape shifts to the view of a breathtaking crystalline lake. The two arrive at the water's edge, and the elderly man lets out a sigh of admiration before that incredibly clean, shimmering water. The young archmage uses his magic to open a small rift, pulling a comfortable beach chair straight out of thin air. The grandfather praises the sheer convenience of the summon, and the grandson explains he is designing everything to be as easy and intuitive as possible. The grandfather grips the fishing rod and praises its perfect weight, commenting that it feels identical to the one he used in his old adventures. With flawless form, the old man tells his grandson to take notes and cast the line into the water with an extremely professional motion. The bait lands perfectly in the water, generating a few small ripples on the surface of that gorgeous, shimmering blue lake. Practicality at that exact moment, the line yanks forward with massive force, and the grandfather shouts excitedly, realizing he just hooked a massive fish. The old man strains, gripping the rod with both hands, and finds himself highly impressed by the creature's absurd resistance beneath the water. Right then, the muscles in his rejuvenated arm flex with full power, showcasing the immense physical stats of his avatar. Shouting that he is far stronger, the old man hauls the rod back all at once, wrenching a gigantic aquatic creature straight out of the deep. The massive fish soars into the sky, revealing a highly exotic design and razor-sharp scales that would leave any fisherman completely awed. The giant creature thuds down onto the shoreline, kicking up dirt and pebbles while the grandfather celebrates the success of his legendary catch. The old man stands breathless, awed by the sheer size of the fish, while his grandson claps, praising his spectacular fishing skills. The grandfather stares down at his own trembling hands, feeling the powerful pulse of blood rushing through his veins with incredible intensity. He reflects on how he had already accepted the inevitable sunset of his life and the relentless toll of aging on his once frail body. With a radiant smile, he celebrates feeling truly alive again after so many years of physical limitations brought on by old age. The grandfather lets out a roaring laugh of pure happiness while Jinwoo watches him, deeply satisfied with the success of the test. The young archmage smiles, thinking about how in the future he will bring over plenty of humans to help protect the vulnerable world of Arsalan. The grandson suggests taking a photo to commemorate the catch, and the old man loves the idea of logging such an incredible moment. The grandfather climbs onto the top of the massive blue fish and strikes a heroic pose, shouting that he feels more energetic and powerful than ever. By the end of the day, the two roast pieces of the fish over a campfire in the middle of the woods, enjoying a wonderful family dinner. The grandfather eats the fish happily, discovering he can taste the flavor and feel completely full inside the virtual world. Suddenly, two local rangers step out from the woods, observing the pair with highly suspicious expressions. The grandfather asks if another player joined the server, but Jinwoo explains that those people are just standard characters of this world. One of the guards complains about the strange terms they are throwing around and decides to bring them to the castle lord for interrogation. At that exact moment, a terrifying voice orders them to halt immediately, leaving the rangers trembling in absolute fear. The archmage unleashes an intimidating aura and orders them to clear the path, as he is currently in the middle of an official business presentation. The guards scramble away terrified, and the grandfather asks if that improvised reaction was due to some kind of bug in the game's AI. The elder remains in awe of the infrastructure and promises absolute financial backing so his grandson can focus entirely on development. The young man celebrates internally over the backing of such a massive conglomerate and thanks him, promising to give his absolute best to the project. The old man asks if he gets to take the device home, and the youth confirms it, explaining there are still plenty of security protocols to iron out. The grandfather refuses to just sit at home waiting around for his time to come and jokes that his late grandmother must be calling for him. The Prota tells the old man to take care of himself while he handles the official distribution of the new goggles to the broader player base. Time passes, and Jinwoo's team works around the clock in the company's grand skyscraper to get everything ready for the big reveal event. The developers implement numerous quality-of-life updates and build a clean user interface to ease the onboarding of future warriors. The art department finalizes the character designs for every inhabitant of Arsalan, basing them faithfully on the incredible scripts written by Tia. They display the brilliant visual design of the leader Leon on the computer monitor, who was engineered to be an extremely handsome hero. The female staff members swoon over the character design, admitting they would absolutely love to see him walking around in person. The team leader approaches and comments that all employees will get to see the hero up close once the game officially launches. The girls complain because they know that only the elite executives received special clearance to participate in the initial alpha tests. They notice the manager's visible exhaustion and ask if he's been spending his nights testing the game, but he tries to brush off his shyness. Suddenly, the door to the grand creative suite swings wide open, drawing the attention of every employee sitting inside. Jinwoo enters the room triumphantly, accompanied by his secretary, and is greeted with immense respect by the entire team. The young man announces that the hardware stability test was a massive success, indicating that mass production is about to begin. The president passes the mic to the managing director so he can deliver the most important announcements regarding the upcoming launch. The man clears his throat and asks if everyone is familiar with the massive expo the electronics parent company hosts to reveal new tech. He excitedly reveals that their company is also going to secure a prime spot at this festival, and the whole team cheers full of energy. He pumps his fist, remembering how everyone endured the jokes and heavy criticism thrown at them by people across the internet. The director strikes a theatrical pose, shouting that their new game is going to dominate the entire global market and move the audience to tears. He promises that right after the presentation, everyone will receive the premium model of the device to begin the definitive internal test. The entire staff raises their fists high, chanting Jinwoo's name like crazy, while he watches everything look completely calm and satisfied. In the middle of all that loud celebration, Jinwoo's phone begins to buzz inside his pocket, drawing his full attention. The young man reads the impatient texts from his grandfather, begging him to open up the servers immediately since his vacation started today. The old man sends a funny sticker warning that he is already on his way to the gaming company. Giving the young man quite a shock, Jinwoo orders everyone to head home early, but the director starts crying, wanting to put in overtime, which leaves the female staff highly annoyed. A few hours later, the sun sets, and the city's bustling convention arena begins prepping for the massive launch event. The expo's main lobby becomes completely packed with reporters and tech fans taking photos of the latest corporate innovations. Some journalists whisper skeptically, claiming the company will tank if they just showcase another vaporware product. Other attendees agree that betting everything on this virtual reality myth was the worst possible strategic gamble. They debate that the current market is stagnant and that the promise of full sensory virtual reality sounds like pure science fiction. The main stage announcer officially kicks off the show, and the spectators sit back anxiously to see the highly anticipated presentation. The presenter walks onto the stage smiling and announces that before diving into business, he wants to introduce a very special guest. Under a cascade of brilliant spotlights, young President Lee Jin-woo makes a triumphant entrance onto the grand conference stage. The crowd murmurs in surprise to see the famous heir once again, and the young man introduces himself formally with great composure before everyone. He jokes around, saying he had a lot of fun reading the absurd rumors claiming he had recently taken a trip to the moon. The young man guarantees that the product he is showcasing today is no illusion and will completely shatter every expectation in the room. With a serious and confident gaze, he extends his arm toward the audience and solemnly declares the start of the massive live test. Suddenly, a colossal wave of magical blue water explodes over the audience, leaving every single reporter in absolute shock. People look around completely terrified, genuinely believing they are submerged deep in the middle of a massive ocean. The president's face reappears on the massive projector screen, and he begins his thrilling speech, recounting the lore of his new world. The visual shifts, showcasing the beautiful sand dunes of a sunny desert while he narrates the grand majesty of each territory. He describes scaling the highest peaks with courage and persistence as the scenery shifts to frozen, icy summits. One of the spectators stands awestruck as he feels the touch of real cold snow, realizing this is absolutely not just standard computer graphics. The young man speaks about conquering planets and the skies, reminding them of space missions that sent probes all the way to Mars. He displays a gorgeous projection of the solar system, commenting that human physical limitations prevent them from exploring any further. The youth questions if they were born in a bad era, destined to pass away without ever experiencing a true cosmic adventure. He firmly reveals that he didn't give up and that he finally found the answer by building the dream world of every single one of them. A massive discharge of purple electrical energy explodes across the stage, putting the entire audience instantly on high alert. The sky of the venue is overtaken by dark clouds as a massive, terrifying blood moon appears shining on the plane's horizon. The entire audience realizes they have been suddenly transported into the middle of a rugged, rocky terrain beneath the glow of the red moon. The photographer looks around startled and comes face to face with a tiny, cute, pink-winged creature floating right next to his shoulder. Dozens of these small winged beings begin fluttering through the crowd, sparking cries of surprise and a lot of delight among them. Jin-woo extends his hand with a grand smile, positioning himself at the center of the arena, ready to introduce his life's greatest masterpiece. He officially announces the full immersion game Arslan Saga, displaying the main heroes and villains designed for the narrative arc. The young man reveals that early access begins in 2 weeks, with only 2,500 hardware units available for purchase. The official website puts the spiritual connection goggles up for sale at a premium price point, showing the strict limit on physical stock. The screen displays a prompt informing users that this is the official and exclusive login device required to enter Arslan Saga. Multiple skeptical comments pop up across social media, mocking the expo and accusing the company of executing a massive publicity stunt. The photographer reads through the negative comments, but is stunned to see that the entire batch of devices sold out completely in mere minutes. His friend managed to score a unit and says he's going to analyze the gameplay closely to decide whether to sue the company for false advertising. The photographer smiles curiously, questioning his friend on the literal possibility of all that fantastic tech being completely real. The young man states that if it's real, he will abandon his tech channel entirely to become a content creator focused solely on this new game. 2 weeks fly by, and the beautiful kingdom of Arslan appears shining under the sunlight, while dragons soar through the local skies. The archmage dresses in his sleek black gala robes, flashing a proud and highly confident smile with the arrival of the grand day. Gripping his staff, he looks out over the forest, announcing excitedly that the human heroes are finally about to arrive in his world. Meanwhile, a local resident of Arslan practices his merchant dialogue lines to perfectly play his role inside the game. Suddenly, the elf Darius yells at him irritably, telling the man to stop immediately because his acting performance is absolutely terrible. She complains that his delivery is way too stiff and comically orders him to eat 6 times a day so he can gain weight quickly for the role. The elven director calls over the village blacksmith and asks if he memorized his script lines before ordering the start of another rehearsal scene. The blacksmith shatters an iron sword with his giant hammer and lets out an ironic laugh, which the elf praises with absolute delight. The assistants debate the success rates for upgrading game items, deciding to keep the gear break percentage incredibly high. Jinwoo walks calmly through the open-air studio set and praises the incredible dedication of his disciple in keeping everything organized. He asks if the tower is prepped, and she confirms they can generate up to 10,000 virtual hero vessels all at once. The mage reflects that the magic stones will be the biggest bottleneck, and he'll need a solution to expand the project later down the line. He knows he needs more labor, but decides to focus first on the financial returns and the arrival of the lowest-level heroes watching the lively school courtyard. The master notes the massive positive impact of investing corporate funds into educating the public. Our prota asks if there are any other roadblocks, and the elf reveals they still haven't found a knight suitable to play the role of Leon. The young man tells her to just pick anyone, but the elf blushes and insists that the main hero Leon needs to be absurdly handsome. She points out that most of the kingdom's veteran warriors are too old and rugged, entirely useless for making female players fall in love. The hero Leon needs to be inspiring enough to make the humans forget about reality and fight with absolute fury for Arsalan. The archmage falls pensive for a few seconds and suddenly flashes a slight smirk upon finding a very rapid solution. Right then, another elite elf named Tyrus approaches, and Jinwoo calls her over out loud to reveal his brilliant new concept. The elf giggles and suggests that the master should just inhabit the Leon vessel himself, but Jinwoo notices she just wants to see him in that outfit. The master clears his throat sheepishly, questioning what they take him for, but the elf argues that the concept of designing the ultimate hero vessel is sound. With a look of pure amusement on her face, Tyrus notes that the vessel is already completed and tells him to follow her immediately. The mage steps into the workshop and comes face to face with dozens of highly realistic artificial bodies stored inside the luxurious room. The young man confesses that this room full of lifelike mannequins gives him the literal chills, while the elf next to him looks completely marveled. The elf finds a small, pointy-eared doll incredibly cute, and Tyrus laughs, revealing it's actually a miniature version of the archmage himself. The elf gets excited, wanting to carry the chubby-cheeked little doll around, but the young master warns her that doing so is highly dangerous. She complains, saying she only wanted to show some affection to the mini-master, and he fires back that that's the issue since she would suffocate him. Ignoring their little bickering, Tyrus points to a chair holding a body covered by a vibrant crimson cloth and announces that right there is Leon. Tyrus asks them not to get too startled when they see the vessel, and Jinwoo asks the reason behind all the secrecy. She explains with a clever smile that it's because she finally managed to attach a highly custom component to the mannequin. The elf pulls away the crimson cloth, revealing she added something that goes far beyond any ordinary technology found in that world. A radiant light fills the room, and Jinwoo's eyes widen in absolute shock when he sees the final results of that craftsmanship. The elf proudly displays all the artificial vessels that were crafted with flawless detail specifically for the incoming player base. The archmage admits that this room packed with artificial bodies gives him the chills, while Darius just stares at everything completely motionless. The elf celebrates loudly, shouting that the hero turned out flawless, and explains the rare dragon materials she used to weave the muscle fibers. She reveals she commissioned 12 legendary dwarf blacksmiths to forge the metallic plate armor using the sacred scales of Helby Jinwoo freezes upon hearing the name of that giant apex beast, wondering if the terrifying monster truly handed over its scales willingly. Sitting on his throne, the young archmage decides to test out the vessel's actual combat stats, activating the magical link system. A massive pillar of blue energy envelops the master's body, initiating the spiritual transfer process into the custom avatar. The elves watch the transfer intensely, blushing with deep admiration as they feel the powerful surge of magical output. The glowing blue eyes of the artificial hero slowly snap open, indicating that Jinwoo's possession was a total success. Meanwhile, over in the city of Seoul, a famous streamer starts her live broadcast 10 minutes ahead of the official server launch. The pink-haired influencer Haebyul showcases the new virtual reality goggles to the millions of followers flooding her live chat. She mentions she bought the standard edition out of fear it might be a scam, and the chat viewers laugh, saying she got ripped off. The moment she puts the device on, the girl is shocked to see her live streaming dashboard floating flawlessly right in front of her eyes. The digital clock on the goggle lens hits exactly 10 o'clock, indicating that the game's official server has just gone live. The monitor screen displays the connection available message, and the chat followers begin typing frantically out of pure curiosity. Determined to uncover the truth, the streamer triggers the login process to test the validity of this crazy tech. She presses the side power button on the device and closes her eyes, preparing herself for the grand transition. a massive discharge of blue light beams around her body, leaving the girl floating in a state of complete, peaceful trance. She lets out a cry of surprise as she witnesses a massive explosion of digital data cascading intensely right across her vision. The girl's consciousness is transported into a mystical chamber where a gigantic blue crystal floats, radiating pure energy. The server-side managing mage celebrates the arrival of their very first hero and orders the assistants to activate the mana circles. Habiel opens her eyes slowly, feeling a bit dizzy as she tries to orient herself in the middle of that massive cosmic space. She notices she is floating completely barefoot in the center of a gorgeous spiral galaxy, wondering how on earth she ended up like this. Her live stream chat appears floating right next to her, and the young woman yells in pure excitement. Realizing she is legitimately inside the game, she notices a sleek blue floating panel and deduces that this must be the official character creation and customization screen. The screen displays the available starting races, including elves and dwarves, boasting incredibly detailed graphic designs. The influencer decides to select the elven race, finding it the most aesthetically pleasing, and takes the opportunity to tweak her avatar's curves. Upon finalizing creation, her new avatar's foot touches the soft grass of Arsalan, completing the onboarding sequence. She strikes a cheerful pose in the middle of the woods, shouting happily to her followers upon seeing she transformed into an elf. Looking straight ahead, she comes face to face with the gorgeous view of Arsalan's starting village beneath a crisp blue sky filled with white clouds. The girl yells in pure happiness at the sheer perfection of nature's details, while her followers lose their minds in the live chat. She celebrates being legitimately inside a virtual world, but stands confused, completely unsure of where she is supposed to go next. Suddenly, a knight appears right behind her, pointing toward the starting village, leaving the influencer surprised and curious. She turns her face slowly, and her eyes spark with pure admiration upon beholding the figure that just materialized at her side. The blonde warrior flashes a gentle smile and asks if she would like him to escort her to the village, leaving the elf heavily blushing. With an extremely charming gaze, the beautiful paladin introduces himself formally as Leon, instantly stealing the girl's heart. As they walk, the starting village reveals itself to be fully bustling, with dozens of new players actively exploring the environment. One of the players celebrates, shouting that the game developer is a literal god, inviting others to squad up and level up together. Another player role-playing as an ancient warrior looks confused, thinking he traveled back in time after battling a celestial demon. Habiel observes the absurd amount of people gathered in the area and reads the chat comments praising the village's beautiful aesthetics. The girl decides to ask around for info on what to do and walks excitedly toward one of the royal guards posted at the village entrance. Being approached out of nowhere, the guard gets slightly startled and exclaims in surprise, recognizing her as a newly summoned hero. The soldier clears his throat nervously, thinking to himself that he needs to execute Tia's script lines as naturally as possible. With a friendly smile, he introduces himself as the village's official welcoming knight and points out the direction of the local tavern. The young elf realizes this is the time to choose her official character username and strikes a pose. Deciding to call herself Habiel, a system window pops up, displaying her new username and comically warning her that her agility stat dropped slightly due to her voluptuous character model. She finds the conversation with the soldier incredibly natural and tries asking if he happens to be a real player. The soldier is impressed by the girl's initiative and directs her to head straight forward to secure her very first quest. He points out the direction of the Adventurers Guild, and the young elf thanks him excitedly, running straight toward the grand structure. Over in her stream's live chat, the followers keep commenting that they are already deeply missing that handsome blonde warrior. Leon Habiel remembers that he simply walked away the moment they crossed the town gates, deducing that he must be just an advanced game NPC. She walks into the guild, hoping to gather more clues about the mysterious knight through the quests she is about to pick up floating high above the village. The young master notes the stellar public reaction to his custom vessel and smiles deeply satisfied. He decides to use his special mystical skills to scan if that very first female player possesses any unique hidden talent stats. The mage analyzes her soul structure, explaining that past real-life experiences mold invisible, powerful traits within the game's system. Looking over at the other warriors, he notices that most ordinary people possess only low-tier common talent traits. But suddenly, the Archmage catches sight of an incredibly brilliant aura radiating from the streamer, left completely shocked by what he sees. He is amazed to note that the girl possesses a high-tier hidden talent capable of forming instant friendships with any type of creature. The master deduces that her long-standing career as a famous streamer was exactly what molded that incredible social charisma stat Jin Woo realizes she can utilize this ability to tame high-level monsters and lead the purification of the entire planet in the future. Meanwhile, the young elf pushes open the luxurious doors of the Adventurers Guild, eager to officially register her character. Upon stepping into the grand hall, the influencer lets out a sigh of admiration at the sheer wealth of detail embedded in the environment. The interior space reveals itself to be a massive golden hall, beautifully decorated with a plush red carpet worthy of an actual palace. Suddenly, she hears a beautiful female voice offering an official welcome and widens her eyes as she searches for the receptionist. This turns out to be the elven author Tia, presenting herself in a cute receptionist outfit with a massive, gorgeous smile on her face. The influencer is completely enchanted by the receptionist's beauty. While her livestream audience loses its absolute mind, the clerk explains that new members receive numerous starter benefits and hands over a registration scroll for the young woman to sign. Witnessing the elf's stunning design, the stream viewers instantly decide they also want to purchase the game as fast as possible. With a silly smile on her face, the streamer takes the quill pen and carefully writes her name onto the registration parchment. Tia Dynamic logs the registration and hands the elf a starter kit containing beginner coins and a magical dimensional inventory bag. The girl thanks her affectionately and receives a cute pat on the head, leaving her entire live audience dying of jealousy over the wholesome interaction. From high above, the master observes the city's activity, pleased with the welcoming hospitality he arranged for the humans. However, the Archmage remembers the hidden sadistic side of his writer Tia, who is already brainstorming terrible ways to test the heroine. She giggles in excitement, wanting to see the streamer cry out in despair, and notes that they just attracted a major veteran gamer. A bare, muscular foot thuds heavily onto the guild floor, drawing the immediate attention of every single staff member at the desk. It turns out to be a massive brute of a man sporting bright pink pigtails, who yells with utter disdain, demanding they bring out food and drinks immediately. The elven receptionist freezes, a massive expression of pure confusion crossing her face, completely unable to process the man's bizarre aesthetic. She sends an absolute panicked mental message to the master, warning him that some seriously unhinged individuals have started entering the server. Other bizarre players begin literal eating the quest papers and rolling down the grand stairs, triggering absolute chaos inside the main hall. The users quickly discover that trolling the guild receptionists unlocks funny achievements, and they begin aggressively pestering the poor elf. The poor author falls to her knees on the floor beneath a dramatic spotlight, completely regretting ever wishing to see real-world human heroes. However, she tightens her fists, leaning back into her sadistic mindset and swearing to get payback by making every single one of them weep. She flashes a psychotic look, vowing to make the hair of every single one of those bizarre trolls fall out during their upcoming trials. In the real world, the breaking news that the game is completely legit shocks the globe, forcing multiple tech critics to host emergency apology streams. A famous tech influencer takes a deep bow on his channel, asking for forgiveness for ever doubting the sheer genius of Lee Jin-woo. Global news networks begin broadcasting special emergency reports, attempting to debate the massive socioeconomic impacts of the game. The top corporate leaders of Seoul realize that any tech company that fails to adapt to this new paradigm will face permanent bankruptcy. A week after the official launch, the young president walks confidently through the corporate headquarters, receiving a standing ovation from his staff. One of the assistants points out the window toward dozens of trucks packed with fan gifts and supportive banners parked right in front of the building. The secretary smiles, holding a coffee, and confirms that the number of fan clubs and corporate perks has scaled astronomically from that point on. The man notes that consumer demand for the hardware has skyrocketed, and Jin-woo praises the excellent performance of his entire team. The master plans to open up the second sales wave, preparing more than 60,000 new hardware units for the global market. With 50,000 soldiers ready, he plans to kick off the initial phase of rebuilding and purifying the entire planet. The young man announces that the main storyline will receive a massive new patch update, and the secretary celebrates the grand debut of Leon. The assistant presents the merchandising plan for Paladin Leon action figures and keychains, and the female staff goes crazy wanting to buy them. Back in the other world, Jin-woo looks at himself in the mirror as Leon, vowing he will make the new heroes play his game until they can't take it anymore. Jin-woo takes a closer look at his features and admits that his new body turned out absurdly handsome and highly commanding. He realizes he was literally complimenting himself in front of the mirror and yells out embarrassedly, telling the elf to knock before entering. The elf walks in poking fun at him, asking if he plans on acting all dramatic like a classic glasses anime hero the entire time. He averts his gaze sheepishly while his assistant walks around the room, laughing at her sovereign's deeply embarrassing situation. She approaches with a highly sarcastic look, repeating the dramatic lines from the script just to tease the master even further. Jinwoo leans into the role of a melancholy hero with background flowers, prompting the elf to beg him in terror to stop using that tone. The young man lets out an exhausted sigh and asks if there are any solid hunting zones available for the beginner heroes to train up their stats. Upon hearing that there are no vacant spots left, he decides to march directly toward the corrupted territory to handle the problem himself. Jinwoo's firm footsteps echo across the crimson, blood-soaked dirt as he steps directly into the dangerous zone of corruption. A massive rift of crackling purple energy tears through the crimson sky of that desolate wasteland, which is overrun by monsters of eternal darkness. The sky becomes completely overcast beneath the glow of that massive, terrifying blood moon shimmering on the area's horizon. Encircled by magical lightning, the Archmage raises his staff, fully prepared to confront the terrible corruption of that place. The young man stares into the dark mist ahead of him, confessing that this corrupted zone still gives him literal chills of dread. In an ironic tone, he questions the monster's lack of manners for failing to come out and greet him properly inside the forest. The young Archmage extends his powerful staff forward and slams it heavily onto the ground, declaring a ringing call of entry. A colossal blast of magical flames and crackling blue lightning explodes, clearing out everything in its path with absolute power. The attack tears a massive crater into the soil, and the system prompts that he just executed a high-level spell comically named Doorbell. A swirling vortex of purple smoke materializes with a macabre chuckle, warning him that there was no need for such a loud racket to announce his arrival. The gigantic master of corruption emerges from the shadows, mocking and asking if the Archmage has finally come to surrender his soul. The fiend displays the high-ranking priests and paladins he corrupted, revealing they are now nothing more than mindless, shackled thralls. The mage recalls with sadness the lonely, desperate battles of his past that ultimately culminated in his inevitable, crushing defeat. The terrible demon mocks him, telling the mage to just accept his demise, questioning how long his fragile barrier can possibly keep protecting him. Instead of showing any fear, the young Archmage simply flashes a light, ironic smile, showcasing absolute composure right in front of him. The monster infuriates at his calm reaction, but the young man coldly fires back, saying he simply found the demon completely pathetic. He points at the creature, explaining that the fiend is bound to his own territory and lacks the actual power to step outside of it. The demon roars furiously, asking if he returned just to mock him, and the mage scoffs, replying that he doesn't have time to waste on him. The prota begins looking around with sheer boredom, commenting that he came out to secure a few specific monsters from this region. Catching sight of a large village packed with huts and monsters off in the distance, the young man flashes a satisfied smile, confirming his target. The system panel displays the data for a level 10 corrupted goblin, which has been completely consumed by pure hatred against all living things. The monster laughs, saying it's completely useless to defeat those pests since the corruption ensures they respawn almost immediately. The mage grips his staff firmly and counters, stating that would only be a problem if he were planning on fighting this war entirely alone. He activates a gigantic, glowing teleportation circle beneath his feet, causing raw magical energy to radiate across the arena. A colossal column of light and blue lightning surges toward the crimson sky, responding to the Archmage's high-level command. The master triumphantly snaps his fingers in midair, executing his plan to pull reinforcements directly from another dimension. The monsters around begin getting sucked straight into the luminous vortex, completely unable to comprehend what is happening to them. A massive detonation of celestial energy consumes the goblins, teleporting the entire monster village away in a matter of mere seconds. The demon roars confused upon witnessing such high-level spatial magic, questioning exactly what kind of trick the mage is trying to pull. With sheer disdain, the mage waves goodbye, warning him that he's borrowing the goblins to use as standard enemies in his brand new game. He congratulates the monster, revealing he has officially been cast as the mid-boss for the game's very first story episode. The young man turns his back on the furious enemy, preparing to depart, but suddenly pauses as a small detail crosses his mind. He tightens his fist firmly and notes that since he borrowed his servants, it's only fair that he delivers a proper payment right now. The gigantic, multi-eyed monster widens every single one of them in utter confusion, completely clueless as to what the human means. In a hilarious display, the Archmage flashes a heavily censored middle finger, telling the powerful Demon Lord to keep the change from the transaction. The Dark Lord roars in extreme fury, spitting out heavy insults against the sheer insolence of the audacious human youth. He lunges with fury, trying to rip the mage to shreds, but the youth vanishes into the portal, leaving the demon screaming all alone in the chaos. Back over in the game's lush green forest, the new heroes initiate their very first official quest to hunt down goblin mobs. Habiel's squad walks carefully, knowing that the monsters here can drop incredibly rare sword rewards upon successful combat. They step into the darkness of the cavern with caution, awaiting the appearance of the first level 10 corrupted goblins. Suddenly, an eerie purple mist begins rolling through the environment, putting the entire adventuring team instantly on high alert. The girl gets tense as everything suddenly goes dark, and her stream chat alerts her that the area boss might be spawning right now. A sickening, purple foot emerges from the shadows, snapping branches and signaling the approach of a terrifying enemy. A massive horde of purple, rabid goblins sporting glowing red eyes charges relentlessly toward the young elf. The adventurers stand stunned upon realizing the giant size of the leading goblin, suspecting it might be an elite-tier monster. The level 10 corrupted goblin unleashes a monstrous, terrifying roar, baring its sharp fangs right at the group. The long-haired warrior of the squad remains unfazed, charging forward confidently and vowing to drop the beast in just 3 strikes. However, the monster lunges with unbelievable speed, catching the swordsman completely off guard before he can even react. The young man widens his eyes in shock, realizing the enemy is simply too fast and that he won't be able to defend himself in time. The monster delivers an extremely violent slash, throwing the long-haired warrior backward with absolute ease. He collapses unconscious onto the forest floor, leaving Habiel and her other teammate in a complete panic, faced with such raw brute force. The squad's mage teammate adopts a heated combat stance, conjuring a massive fireball directly toward the advancing monsters. A colossal vortex of flames consumes the entire goblin area, triggering a brilliant detonation in the middle of the woods. He smiles confidently, believing he won the battle, but his viewers in the stream chat begin frantically warning him. A dark silhouette moves swiftly through the smoke, revealing that the goblins walked away completely unscathed by that fire spell. The monster bursts from the smoke, landing a heavy blow on the mage while the followers comment that he literally triggered the defeat cliché Habiel aims her bow, trembling as she watches her teammates get wiped out, realizing she is completely isolated against the pack. She takes in the intimidating design of the monsters and panics, concluding she stands absolutely zero chance of winning this fight alone. The goblin leaps ferociously in her direction, weapon raised and ready to deliver the final blow to the young elf. With nowhere left to run, the girl squeezes her eyes shut tight and lets out a desperate scream, bracing for the worst possible outcome. Suddenly, a powerful beam of golden light slices through the air at high speed, striking the monster right at the moment of its attack. It is the legendary hero Leon, making a spectacular entrance, delivering fatal strikes and instantly wiping out the entire enemy horde. The monsters' bodies are cut clean in half all at once, demonstrating the absurd strength of the paladin in shimmering plate armor. Habiel slowly opens her eyes and is left completely stunned to find the handsome knight standing tall right before her. Beneath the shimmer of the moonlight, Paladin Leon flashes a highly charming smile, commenting pleasantly that they have crossed paths once again with a heroic posture. He extends his hand to her and asks with immense sweetness if the young elf happened to get hurt during the clash. The narration compares the precise movements of Leon's body to the flawless operation of a global luxury watch's inner gears. It explains that every single component was meticulously engineered by legendary craftsmen without a single millimeter of error or defect, and that the hero Leon's body operates in that exact same flawless, immersive manner through the direct power of the Archmage. He possesses countless integrated magical circuits that guarantee absurd divine spells to heal and bless absolutely anything he touches. Packed with dozens of passive and active skills, the hero can emit a highly eye-catching, glowing golden aura of sheer vitality. The influencer finds herself completely hypnotized by that golden shimmer, admitting that the warrior is incredibly radiant. She shakes her head nervously, trying to regain her focus after receiving a generous 10,001 donation from a viewer. The paladin asks once more if she is all right, and the girl stammers heavily, completely unable to form a coherent response. Noticing the streamer's typical flustered reaction, Jinwoo decides to have a bit of fun, controlling the vessel to tease the young elf. Suddenly, a system alert pops up, revealing a special 5,000,001 milestone quest sent directly by the Archmage himself. Upon reading that absurd reward value, the streamer freezes for an instant and prepares to give her absolute best in the upcoming absurdity. Completely red-faced and embarrassed, she strikes a cute pose, mimicking a bunny to clear the challenge and secure the massive payout. She acts out funny poses and blows heart kisses directly toward the stream screen, delivering massive entertainment to her live chat paladin. Leon observes her with a completely static, baffled expression, unable to comprehend the reason behind such a bizarre dance. In a tone of deep concern, the knight comments innocently that she must have taken a really heavy blow to the head during the fight. He places his hand over her head, attempting to cast a mental restoration spell, prompting the elf to panic, shouting that she is perfectly sane. Other followers begin donating massive sums of money, begging in the live chat for her to repeat that hilarious bunny pose. The girl yells back irritably, stating she is absolutely not doing that again. While Leon just watches all that chaos look completely baffled, Jinwoo thoroughly enjoys himself behind the hero's controls and resolves to test the elf's shyness even further by bumping up the prize money. The Archmage drops another $1,000,000 bonus reward onto the screen, and the streamer widens her eyes, almost having a literal heart attack right there. Completely unable to resist that much cash, the girl bites her lip and raises her trembling hands, striking the bunny pose once again. She begins hopping around in a cute, embarrassed manner, mimicking bunny ears with her fingers right in front of the armored paladin. The streamer completes the little bunny dance with her face completely crimson with embarrassment, delivering top-tier live content. She hides her face, weeping from pure shame, while Leon concludes thoughtfully that money truly holds a bizarre power in this realm. The hero extends his hand to guide her back to the guild, and Jinwoo bursts into laughter behind the controls, watching the streamer's inner drama. The video clip of the bizarre dance instantly goes viral, hitting 300 million views and becoming the internet's biggest new meme. Habiel walks right behind the handsome blonde warrior, admiring his majestic build from a distance. The charming paladin Leon keeps leading the way, completely unaware that he is being closely checked out by the elf. Suddenly, he turns around with a gentle smile, warning her to watch her step very carefully. Habiel blushes completely red and thanks him for the concern while the game chat erupts with pure hype. Leon guarantees that the terrible monsters of this region won't be able to breach their position, leaving the young elf highly intrigued. She bows, offering formal thanks for the assistance, and introduces herself as Habiel while he reveals his own name. The paladin shares that he travels around investigating the terrible corruption of the mist and the dangerous monsters lurking in the area. He explains the lore behind the protective barrier and confirms that the purple hue of the goblins is a clear indicator of the corruption. Jinwoo activates a special scanning skill, causing his eyes to blaze with a powerful blue magical flame. The system reveals the girl's high S-rank mystical affinity stat, proving she has the potential to become the leader of the upcoming raid expedition. The Archmage extends his hand, knowing that his own physical strength alone won't be enough to handle the upcoming war. He triggers an official urgent main story quest, requesting her aid to defeat the dangerous corrupted goblins. Habiel stands shocked upon realizing she just unlocked the main storyline questline and that she needs to recruit party members. She worries about managing to gather that many people, since most casual adventurers just want to gather herbs in complete peace. But remembering that the request came directly from Leon himself, she fills with courage and decides to accept the grand challenge. Without hesitating, the young elf shakes the handsome knight's hand, officially sealing the contract for this brand new mission. The influencer yells out, blushing red with embarrassment, swearing to give it her absolute best while holding Leon's hand tight. The news spreads like wildfire, and soon multiple groups of warriors begin mobilizing enthusiastically all across the village. The fearless paladin joins in on the low-level skirmishes, smashing fierce monsters and winning over absolutely everyone there. He hands out sweet compliments to the casual herb gatherers, leaving one of the female players practically floating with joy. With a bright smile on his face, the hero hands over a pouch packed with premium potions as a reward for the hard-working warriors. The casual adventurers weep with emotion over Leon's pure kindness, who distributes his own supplies without asking for anything in return. The knight flashes an enchanting smile, reassuring them that it's perfectly fine since he has the backing of such courageous heroes. Shortly after, the community forums are absolutely flooded with emotional testimonies from people saved by his pure generosity. One of the players shares how the custom hero title granted by Leon motivated him to finally step out of his real-life bedroom after years. The young man weeps as he is embraced with love by his mother, deeply regretting having spent so much time isolated from the real world. Determined to turn his life around for good, he promises to fight bravely as a true hero inside the world of Arslan. Jinwoo observes the forums deeply satisfied, realizing his player engagement strategy is working flawlessly. With the success of the initial phase, he decides that now is the perfect time to accelerate things over in the other world. The Archmage descends the stairs of his tower, donning his dark robes and wielding his glowing blue magic staff. The massive double doors of his central command center swing open all at once, announcing the solemn arrival of the Tower Master. He walks toward the grand chamber where the core engine floats, encircled by powerful arcs of electrical energy. The elf managing the facility turns around, holding several status reports, and greets him with immense respect and dedication. The master asks about the status of the central control mechanism, and the assistant guarantees it is fully dialed in. He smiles, sensing the energy signature of the corruption, planning to weaponize it to design tougher challenges for the players. The Archmage concludes that if the monster raids increase, the player base will band together much faster to fight the oncoming war. He orders them to summon the primary faction leaders and load up the core story characters for the start of the emergency meeting. With a mischievous smirk on his face, the Archmage humorously reveals the true purpose behind this sudden staff assembly. The young man wickedly declares that now the time has come for his own loyal servants to transform into the goblin mobs. The subordinates approach with macabre grins, but the master cracks down, telling them to sit their corporate selves down immediately. They ask what the new mission parameters are, and Jinwoo notes he will explain everything the moment the elf Tia steps into the room. Suddenly, the elf whispers right next to his ear, startling the Archmage, who hadn't even noticed her silent approach. She sports a shadowy, exhausted expression, asking what the issue is and sending the young man into an absolute panic. Jinwoo yells out startled, complaining about her invading his personal space like that and almost giving him a literal heart attack. She flops down completely drained onto the meeting room couch, and the master asks worriedly if something terrible happened. The author complains in a highly sarcastic tone, questioning if he genuinely believes everything is running smoothly out there on the servers. She recalls irritably a highly bizarre player who spent the entire day inside the guild hall, performing ridiculous emotes without any armor equipped. Tia rants furiously against the absolute clown behavior of the human heroes, while the master tries to calm her down humorously. She demands they stop wasting precious magical energy on these casuals, and the youth apologizes, chuckling at all the drama. He tries to shift the topic and asks how the other two servants are doing, who appear to be sitting there dying of sheer panic. Old Hasmanka vents with a chuckle that the adventurers are already starting to get highly suspicious of his true mystical identity. The other servant nods irritably, complaining that those foolish players know absolutely nothing, yet act like they own the entire map. The Archmage is left completely speechless, watching his entire core team sigh in deep exhaustion inside the conference room. Tia asks the reason behind the sudden assembly, and Tyrus confesses with a giggle that she just wanted to watch everyone's funny reactions up close. The master extends his hand, handing over modern-looking video game controllers for them to utilize in his next massive project phase. He reveals the hardware is synced to control goblin mobs, ordering the three of them to play as monsters to feed experience points to the heroes. She stands completely indignant upon learning she will have to pilot ugly creatures and get beaten up by players just to help them level up. The elf weeps, complaining loudly, but the master insists that getting crushed by monsters will force the heroes to unite much faster for the kingdom. He explains that the warriors' souls respawn without suffering any real physical damage, ordering the elf to fight without a single shred of mercy. She lets out a sinister giggle, accepting the challenge, and Jinwoo freezes upon hearing her happily whisper that she will completely wipe them all out. The elf analyzes the peripheral device, finding the design highly intriguing, and asks the master exactly how to activate its features. He joins the group, explaining in simplified terms the functions of each button so that everyone can pilot their units with total ease. The young man loads up a bright holographic screen in the center of the room, instructing them to perform their very first manual movement calibration. Tia timidly taps the buttons on the game controller, attempting to get accustomed to the layouts of the brand new system. She celebrates surprised upon seeing on screen that the little corrupted goblin started running around, obeying her direct inputs. Hasmanka absolutely loves the concept, promising to deliver top-tier motivation to the game's heroes through his ruthless tactical combat maneuvers. With a manic look in his eyes, the old man confesses he always dreamed of micromanaging someone's actions exactly as he saw fit. The elder notes he has plenty of free time on his hands, and Jinwoo decides to trust the game's raid strategy to the seasoned hands of his loyal servant. The entire group begins playing happily, discovering that the goblin models can execute highly advanced, acrobatic movements across the map. The master observes their roaring laughter from a distance, as they amuse themselves by absolutely tormenting the low-level players in the woods. Jinwoo frames his hands like a camera lens to capture a snapshot of that hilarious, laid-back moment shared by his core staff. The photo captures the group cracking up and striking funny poses while gaming together inside the high tower's main command deck. The gorgeous group photo becomes Jinwoo's brand new smartphone wallpaper, marking the start of Monday evening back on Earth. The young heir looks down at his phone screen and flashes a proud smile over the massive success of his project. The system logs indicate that the moment the corrupted goblin faction falls, the player base will officially kick off story. Chapter 1. He sits at his luxurious dining table, mapping out the distribution logistics for the second hardware batch of virtual reality goggles. Suddenly, a spoon is slammed with extreme violence against the table, triggering a loud ringing noise that cuts off his train of thought. His family members stand up furiously from their chairs, glaring down at the young man with highly dramatic, intense expressions. The elderly grandfather fixes him with a deeply serious, intimidating gaze, causing the other relatives to lower their heads in pure fear. The old man steps away from the table with a firm stride, exiting the room accompanied by the other family members walking quietly behind him. The young archmage is left sitting all alone and completely confused by his family's sudden dramatic exit, unsure of what went wrong. Sometime later over in Arsilan, multiple groups of warriors assemble outside the town walls, shouting for reinforcements to hunt the goblins. The casual adventurers complain furiously about having lost 10 hours of progress and valuable gear drops due to the aggressive monster raids. Jinwoo walks through the central plaza, noticing a massive commotion of heated players gathered right in front of the village's grand statue. He observes the shouting crowd of adventurers with a startled expression, wondering exactly what kind of crisis is unfolding down there. Suddenly, a rabid purple goblin leaps forward, executing flashing, rapid attacks through the air against the warriors trying to defend themselves. One of the players calls out for healing support, but is instantly cut off by a devastating blast of magical flames generated by the beast. The warrior hides behind his burning shield, shouting incredulously upon witnessing a standard goblin mob casting high-tier magic spells. The monster lunges with its spear raised, piercing through multiple adventurers at once, leaving the young master quite shocked. The elf Tia lets out a roaring laugh, controller in hand, celebrating the absolute damage she just inflicted on the enemy party with her spell combo. They celebrate, high-fiving over the excellent performance execution, and the master realizes the entire village crisis was triggered by his own elves. She turns to face him with an extremely pale complexion and deep dark circles, looking like someone who hasn't slept in dozens of consecutive hours. The master notes that the entire group sports a terrifying aura, typical of hardcore gamers who spent the entire night binging without pausing for a single second. The youth realizes that instead of helping the newbies level up, they are simply farming and torturing the poor players of the starting zone. Hazmanka cheers upon dropping yet another casual hero, and Jinwoo yells out startled, confirming that this is pure toxicity against the user base. Tia laughs like a maniac, telling them all to get wiped out, while the system logs prompt that the goblin mob stats have just been dynamically updated. The interface panel reveals that the level 10 goblin officially unlocked the title Hero Hunter after accumulating dozens of player eliminations in the woods. The master stands shocked looking at the pile of defeated adventurers cleared out by the elf, asking exactly how many players she wiped from the map. The archmage warns her that the time has come to trigger the grand finale event, and Tia celebrates, noting she almost forgot the best part. The monster's hairy leg stomps down with utter disdain right onto the fallen hero's head, sealing the absolute humiliation of those beginner players. The monster's hairy leg stomps down with utter disdain right onto the fallen hero's head, sealing the absolute humiliation of those beginner players. The bizarre creature uses the unconscious body of the defeated adventurer as a literal barbell, cracking down on bench presses right in the middle of the woods. The warriors watching from afar yell out furiously, accusing the bizarre creature of executing an absolute toxic disrespect inside the game. Controlling the monster, the elf Tia lets out hysterical laughs, mocking the extreme weakness and low skill level of the human warriors. Jinwoo observes the elves gaming, wondering in absolute awe where on earth they learned to execute such loud, highly aggravating taunts. Despite everything, the master flashes a slight smirk, knowing that humiliating defeat will serve as an excellent primary engagement hook. The metrics roll in exactly as designed, and a massive crowd of heated adventurers raises their weapons, fully prepped for full combat. The collective outrage spreads like wildfire, and the army of heroes bands together at the guild hall much faster than anyone could have calculated. Paladin Leon adjusts his gauntlets with a satisfied smile, knowing that the true planet salvation phase has officially kicked off. He walks imposingly through the gilded halls, his vibrant blue cape fluttering triumphantly beneath the ambient spotlights. With a sharp gaze, the handsome knight declares with absolute conviction that the time has finally come to launch the raid. Meanwhile, the village blacksmith stares down at a red-bearded adventurer, questioning if he is truly planning on risking his entire inventory today. The burly warrior cracks his knuckles audaciously, telling the blacksmith to just initiate the upgrade process without any further delay. The craftsman raises his heavy iron hammer, bowing to wipe that confident smirk clean off the young man's face with the final upgrade results. With a powerful shout, he delivers a violent strike against the wooden shield, triggering a massive cascade of bright sparks. The equipment begins to glow with an intense, mystical golden energy, indicating that the weapon enhancement sequence has officially engaged. Suddenly, dense smoke and a heavy blast of fire blanket the entire workbench, startling everyone standing around the forge. The blacksmith pretends his hand slipped and offers a sheepish apology, while the system screen prompts that the upgrade cruelly failed. The warrior falls into despair, clutching his head as he watches his precious shield drop down a power tier. Due to the cranky blacksmith, Habiel steps up and asks if he's just throwing away his resources for nothing, prompting the bearded man to comically weep, begging for comfort. She glares at him with disdain, asserting that his behavior is nothing but pure dopamine addiction, since he almost broke that exact same item during yesterday's test. The warrior yells back wildly, claiming the addiction completely consumes him and that he needs higher stakes to face the upcoming raid expedition. The blacksmith lets out a roaring laugh, mocking the absolute stubbornness and low height stats of the burly adventurer. Ignoring all safety warnings, the man bets his entire remaining fortune, ordering the blacksmith to forge the item just one more time. Suddenly, the heavy, clanking steps of metallic armor approach, drawing the swift attention of the elf, who spins around startled. Leon appears radiating pure charisma, praising the rapid stat progression of the adventurers, while the crowd in the back erupts with hype. The elf questions his presence in the starting zone, and he explains he wanted to analyze the overall status of the local area before the main march. The paladin notes he wishes to do everything in his power to assist the raid party, and the young elf finds herself enchanted by his pure nobility of spirit. Out of nowhere, the bearded warrior charges directly toward the paladin, catching everyone completely off guard with his desperate approach. He drops to his knees, clutching onto the knight and begging for assistance, leaving Leon looking over the bizarre situation. Completely baffled, Habiel humorously explains that the bearded guy is the main tank of their party, who happens to suffer from a severe gear-enhancing addiction. The burly man begs only for the paladin to stand right next to him to serve as a lucky charm to buff his upgrade success rates. Blacksmith Mong Dungs flashes a thumbs up, guaranteeing he will deliver his absolute best work for this specific forge attempt. The master agrees to assist, and the warrior clasps his hands together, praying fervently for the holy blessing of the Golden Paladin. The blacksmith locks in, unleashing his raw muscle power, and delivers another brutal hammer strike against the metallic anvil. The impact triggers a colossal boom, scattering shimmering golden energy across the entire workshop environment. A massive pillar of radiant light explodes from the workbench, leaving every single spectator standing in absolute silence. The screen prompts that the iron shield successfully hit level 5, causing the entire crowd gathered there to erupt into pure euphoria. The warrior jumps around shouting upon seeing a high-tier crimson stat modifier pop up across his gear upgrade interface. He thanks him, bowing repeatedly before Leon, who smiles sheepishly, noting he didn't actually do anything special. The burly man begins aggressively mocking Habiel, displaying his new shimmering item, and the elf turns red with rage at the taunts. A brand new $1 million challenge flashes across the elf's stream screen, promising a 1,000,001 payout if she upgrades her own bow. Driven by the pure allure of cash, she grabs the knight's shoulders, demanding that he also bless her upcoming forge attempt. Blacksmith Mongdungs flashes a confident grin and brings down the hammer with maximum force onto the anvil to enhance the young elf's bow. The girl's bow glows intensely, confirming a successful upgrade execution, and she screams in joy upon watching the miracle happen live. The elf jumps with happiness, declaring her absolute love for the hero while the other adventurers crowd around him curiously. Dozens of warriors encircle the paladin, begging for him to also grant his luck buff to their respective gear items. The paladin smiles, noting that would be incredibly easy. While the blacksmith in the back turns pale with dread at all the incoming labor, Jinwoo flashes a sadistic grin behind the controls, ordering the poor worker to suffer a bit, leaving the blacksmith begging for absolute mercy. An endless cascade of upgrade success prompts screens out, and the blacksmith scrambles around, working non-stop to clear the massive line of warriors. The blacksmith slumps to the floor, completely drained from overworking, venting that he burned through every single drop of his energy reserves. Walking through the village, Habiel praises Leon's absurd luck stats, but he simply attributes the success to the blacksmith's raw crafting skills. A highly cheerful, fair-haired bard appears out of nowhere, strumming his instrument to congratulate the party on their successful gear upgrades. The musician enthusiastically offers to perform a victory ballad, leaving the adventurers looking highly sheepish over the gesture. He begins belt-singing a bizarre lyric incredibly loud, prompting Leon to ask surprised if the elf already knew this eccentric character. Habiel reveals that when the bard plays his noisy tracks, even the goblin mobs get a literal headache and scramble away terrified from him. The paladin remembers the highly sensitive hearing traits of his elven staff, finally understanding why his author has been ghosting his calls lately. However, scanning the bard's brilliant soul signature up close, the paladin senses that spiritual energy profile feels deeply familiar. The system logs reveal that the musician once dreamed of real-world stardom back on Earth, and his soul now boasts an unshakable determination trait. Habiel asks if something is wrong with the hero, but he simply places a hand over his face, masking his deep corporate thoughts. Suddenly, a muscular red-haired female warrior steps forward with an intimidating posture, demanding to lead the entire raid expedition without argument. Another adventurer fires back, mocking her with a laugh and comparing the warrior to a hunting hound, triggering a tense climate across the squad. He flashes a sadistic grin, further provoking his rival, and revealing he desires to crush anyone who dares cross his path. The warrior turns crimson with rage, threatening to break the face of the arrogant archer who continues to mock her leadership capabilities. Leon steps right between the two with immense calm, asking them to save all that combat fury to unleash against the actual monster mobs. He observes them closely with an analytical gaze, realizing that the energy profiles of these faction leaders also look deeply familiar to him. The youth freezes upon realizing that those two leading warriors are actually the spiritual projections of his own grandfather and his sister. He analyzes the red-haired muscular warrior in silence, shocked to deduce that that buff military-style avatar was built by his actual sister. The Prota recalls cute yet chaotic real-life memories shared with his sister back on Earth, trying to process her new aggressive personality archetype here. Watching the girl shout, bloodthirsty for combat at the head of the vanguard, he wonders how on earth she ended up with such a brute visual build. The youth notes that both his grandfather and his sister have already founded massive gaming guilds, becoming highly influential leaders inside the server. He reflects on the extreme difficulty metrics required to farm points to establish guilds, concluding that his family is truly relentless. Suddenly, the crowd of adventurers in the plaza catches sight of the Golden Paladin and begins chanting his name with immense joy. The warriors solemnly proclaim they have assembled here specifically to answer the paladin's request to wipe out the enemy forces. A female warrior timidly thanks him for the assistance she received in the past, guaranteeing she will do everything to clear the new raid expedition. Other adventurers sporting highly exotic visual designs join the conversation, demonstrating total backing for the hero for the battle ahead. One of the girls in the party turns completely red, absolutely enchanted to hear the charming paladin Leon pronounce her actual username. Leon praises the stat growth of every single one of them, declaring it would be an immense honor to fight alongside such determined heroes. The crowd of players goes absolutely wild at his inspiring speech, shouting in unison and agreeing to march forward together. With a confident smile, the hero celebrates the party's unity and officially orders the start of the grand march toward danger. The paladin walks majestically through the village gates, while the kingdom's NPC soldiers offer one final solemn salute. Captain Heine positions herself at the head of the garrison, drawing her glowing sword and barking command orders to all soldiers. She and her warriors raise their blades in a beautiful, solemn salute to honor the brave adventurers marching off to war. The narration highlights the departure of the legendary paladin Leon, leading a colossal raid army of over 800 warriors across Arcelan. Under the beautiful send-off from the village guard, the massive expeditionary force marches confidently toward the corrupted mist. The scenery shifts to a desolate forest beneath a crimson sky, showcasing the official arrival of the raid group inside the corruption zone. The bearded warrior strikes a salute pose, letting out a loud laugh as he senses the intense combat energy of that hostile area. He comments with a chuckle on the terrifying beauty of the location, and another warrior offers to share a drink with his friend. The musician begins drafting rock lyrics inside his notebook, prompting the other adventurers to beg him desperately to stop doing that. Because they view everything as just a video game, the adventurers march without a shred of fear, showcasing immense lightness in the dark. The Archmage reflects that he shouldn't force the human heroes, but rather train them and help them level up voluntarily along their journey. Back at the tower, Darius reports the success of the scoping phase, and Tia warns with a laugh that the goblin mobs have been properly buffed. The entire tower staff celebrates, throwing up peace signs, revealing that the local townsfolk are gathered watching the raid stream at base. Leon flashes a highly confident smirk, realizing that the hour for the ultimate survival test has officially arrived on the server. Suddenly, the dark mist intensifies across the desolate forest, officially launching the 5th server-wide raid test event. The adventuring expedition steps deeper into the dense woods, immediately on high alert upon noticing the air turned extremely thick and eerie. The warriors complain about the near-zero visibility metrics, but praise the perfect immersion of that mist designed by the development team. The paladin warns them that the corruption is actively decaying the area, leaving the young elf extremely worried about party safety. A slick, purple tentacle writhes between the dead trees, indicating the presence of a highly hostile force lurking inside the woods. Before they can even execute a fallback maneuver, purple tentacles lunge in a surprise attack, ensnaring Paladin Leon and terrifying the entire expedition. Leon reacts instantly, using his massive metal broadsword to block the treacherous strike of the purple tentacle. The Paladin yells out, ordering all adventurers to fall back immediately since this is a direct attack from the core corruption. Multiple gigantic tentacles burst from the ground all at once, encircling the entire raid party in the middle of the dark forest. The warriors fall into a total panic, completely unable to comprehend what kind of terrifying world event is unfolding around them. The young elf looks up in absolute shock as she watches the dark smoke coalesce into a colossal creature model. The dark creature's attack sweeps through the forest with violence, triggering a massive physical impact across the combat zone. Suddenly, a gigantic sword of divine light plunges from the heavens, cracking the ground open and illuminating the entire battlefield. Paladin Leon delivers a flashing strike, enveloped by a powerful and divine radiant energy profile against the monster. The explosion of solar energy consumes the purple tentacles, freeing the adventurers from that lethal entrapment. The knight asks if everyone is all right, and the elf thanks him relieved, right when her sister yells out, telling them to hold up. The red-haired warrior locks her gaze onto the horizon, pointing out that something highly bizarre is active forming up in the skies. A sinister, dark solar eclipse takes over the crimson sky, surrounded by an extremely wicked purple smoke signature. The entire army of adventurers watches terrified as that black sun materializes, blocking out all natural daylight from the zone. Suddenly, a monstrous goblin begins heavily beating a massive war drum, echoing a terrifying sound profile across the valley. A colossal horde of corrupted goblins surges from the hills, roaring with fury and fully prepped to rip the intruders to shreds. The enemy army charges down the rocky slopes at high speed, heading directly toward the expeditionary force. Ururagam flashes a massive, mocking grin, celebrating the arrival of the monster wave, eager to test out his new defense stats. The paladin seriously concludes that this whole setup was a highly coordinated ambush, and that the monsters were already awaiting them here. He realizes the enemies anticipated their arrival metrics, and that there is a dark intelligence coordinating the actions of the goblin mobs. The master concludes that an absurdly powerful entity is actively remote interfering with the controls of the purple goblin army controlling the creatures. Tia lets out manic laughs, gearing up to order her army to completely obliterate the adventuring party. The heroes begin to tremble upon taking in the absurd number of enemies and an ancient dragon model flying across the dark sky. Feeling accountable for the excessive danger parameters, the paladin assumes full responsibility for bringing the party here so early. He snaps his fingers in midair, heroically declaring he will utilize his magic to mass teleport everyone safely back to the village. Glowing blue magic circles manifest beneath the feet of every single adventurer, initiating the return teleportation sequence. The game prompt displays the heavy death penalties active in this zone if they choose to stay, and everyone panics upon reading them. Hebiel screams desperately, asking what will happen to the paladin if he chooses to stay behind alone fighting the entire map. Leon simply offers a sad, melancholy smile in absolute silence, leaving the young elf deeply touched by his selfless attitude. She cancels her teleportation, asserting she won't leave the hero to fight alone, swearing to defend him with her own life until the end. The red-haired warrior also cancels her return, raising her giant battle axe and declaring that a true hero never hits the logout button. The purple-haired archer leads his companions in a massive battle cry, refusing to flee from such an epic encounter. The paladin stands surprised and deeply awed to witness the unshakable determination and unity of all his warriors. He warns them seriously that this upcoming clash will be far more brutal than the last. Asking if they are truly ready, Hebil flashes a gorgeous smile packed with determination, asserting with absolute certainty that they are more than ready. The hero draws his grand, shimmering sword, swearing to fight alongside his party until the absolute end of his spiritual energy reserves. He raises his glowing weapon high, causing all the adventurers' weapons to instantly receive the exact same elemental buff. The warriors watch their blades get enveloped by golden lightning. Feeling an unbelievable surge of strength flow through their character models, Leon adopts a flawless combat stance, pointing his grand sword directly toward the massive army of corrupted goblins. Shouting for the kingdom, the heroes charge with absolute fury, initiating a direct clash against the gigantic enemy horde. Back on the command deck, the master watches the battle kick off on screen. Declaring that the true game has officially begun, Darius questions the author regarding the risk of the heroes facing permanent character corruption if they choose to flee this forest clash. Tia chuckles, saying they have absolutely no escape since the game script is active, forcing everyone to fight until the quest parameter clears. The author smiles satisfied, acknowledging that Jinwoo's genius player engagement strategy worked like an absolute charm. The narration highlights the pure bravery of the humans, who fight tooth and nail against the dark forces to safeguard Arsalan. With a malicious little smirk, the elf prepares to dynamically scale up the difficulty metrics of that massive encounter. She begins hammering the controller buttons like crazy, determined to use her full mechanical skill to completely crush the adventurers receiving the elf's inputs. The pack of corrupted goblins charges with glowing eyes, letting out roars of extreme fury. Ururugom takes full command of the front line, ordering the immediate advance of the heavy shield defensive squad unit. He charges forward, executing a devastating shield bash imbued with holy electricity that sends the goblin mobs flying away. The warrior laughs out loud, celebrating the insane power stats of his new level 5 shield, which dazes every single monster in the arena. The warrior's shield charge launches the goblin mobs straight through the air with a tremendous physical knockback force. One of the purple goblins attempts to strike back with a club, but the attack is effortlessly blocked by the hero's shield stats. The enemy army collides with full force against the defensive wall, forcing the warriors to fight back with absolute grit. However, the horde is fast and manages to inflict heavy damage on multiple adventurers, who begin bleeding HP on the front line. The red-haired female warrior is also flanked in a surprise attack from behind, but reacts swiftly, raising her massive weapon to guard. A blue-cloaked paladin arrives at high speed, shouting to his combat partner to help him breach the enemy line. He gains momentum by stepping heavily onto his bearded partner's giant shield, executing an acrobatic high jump through the air. Flying high beneath the crimson sky, the blonde knight concentrates his full golden magic pool into his grand combat sword. He readies himself to deliver a devastating downward slash, letting out an intimidating battle cry against the monsters. The mystical strike hits the ground, triggering a massive explosion of holy electricity that instantly incinerates dozens of purple goblins. The monsters are consumed by the raw radiant energy, letting out cries of intense pain as they turn to ash inside the arena. A colossal tornado of flames and golden lightning sweeps across the central forest area, completely clearing the path for the heroes. Multiple goblins fall defeated onto the smoldering stone floor, leaving nothing but smoke and magical residue from their deleted models. Paladin Leon strikes a heroic pose, enveloped in crackling golden lightning, swearing to defend every single adventurer in this raid. Inspired by the beautiful strike, the red-haired warrior yells out motivated, ordering her allies to charge with full fury against the beasts. The entire offensive line of heroes surges forward in an unstoppable rush, triggering a massive battle roar across the territory. The fearless red-haired leader raises her heavy battle axe, prepping to deliver a violent cleave to the next goblin mob. She spins her giant weapon with extreme muscle force, slicing through the monsters attempting to block her advance through the woods. A purple goblin attempts to lunge at her with sharp claws, seizing a tiny opening inside the brave girl's defense parameters. Much to the monster's surprise, she delivers a violent metallic headbutt right to its face, sending the enemy flying backward. The girl continues her brutal vanguard run, handing out heavy punches and combat strikes while laughing from pure adrenaline in the arena. An enemy armed with a club attempts a cowardly backstab attack, capitalizing on the warrior's distraction during the clash. Suddenly, a pinpoint arrow slices through the air, hitting the purple monster's head and saving the warrior from taking a surprise blow. The monster drops lifeless onto the crimson soil, and the girl looks back, offering a silent nod of thanks to the archer teammate. The purple-haired archer salutes the warrior with a friendly gesture, celebrating their solid party synergy in this grand encounter. Meanwhile, Habiel commands the ranged DPS attack squad, ordering all archers to prep their inputs on her direct signal. On the elf's command, a volley of hundreds of arrows is released simultaneously, completely covering the dark sky of the combat zone. The girl turns red upon reading her livestream chat comments, mocking her highly bizarre archery shooting stance inside the game. The expedition's mages conjure powerful fireballs and wind spells that streak through the air toward the advancing enemy army. The spells impact the enemy lines, triggering colossal explosions that send dozens of monsters flying all at once across the map. Despite their success, the mages begin to feel dizzy, growing worried over the lack of mana potions needed to sustain this level of combat output. The blonde bard observes all that raw dedication and exhaustion of the heroes on the battlefield, deciding he needs to act to support them. He locks in, strumming an epic war anthem that causes a powerful mystical aura to completely envelop his own character model. The surrounding warriors startle as waves of red and blue magical energy radiate directly from the bard's instrument. The divine track instantly restores the stamina and mana pools of every single exhausted warrior across the active battlefield. He shouts enthusiastically, telling everyone to absorb his mana pool, promising to play his music until the end to empower his army. Completely refreshed, the warriors charge with full fury, pushing back the monster horde with absolute ease. The young elf preps her bow with a confident smirk, realizing that the raid party is finally making solid progression in the clash. The adventurers celebrate as they watch the horde thin out, genuinely believing they will clear this battle against the purple goblins. Suddenly, a colossal bolt of black lightning plunges from the heavens, triggering a massive shockwave that throws the heroes across the arena. The warriors scramble to stand up amidst the dust, terrified and clueless as to what kind of high-level creature just landed on the field. The terrifying hero hunter goblin emerges from the crater, enveloped in blue flames, letting out a monstrous roar of pure fury. With a single swing of its dark spear, the beast triggers a massive blast of purple energy that wipes out the entire central combat zone. The violent impact throws multiple wounded warriors backward, and the master observes the raid situation growing rapidly critical. The fallen models of the defeated goblins begin to move in a bizarre fashion on the stone floor, indicating something is seriously wrong. The players fall into absolute despair upon watching every single creature they cleared return to life as an undead mob. The number of survivors drops rapidly to 639 as the horde advances completely relentlessly. The player count keeps plummeting without stopping down. To 509 as the monsters clear out defenseless adventurers, Leon surges forward, delivering a flashing strike to parry the monster boss, shouting out, declaring that he will be its opponent. The terrible hero hunter goblin fixes its gaze onto the blonde paladin, letting out a deafening roar. Accepting the ultimate challenge, Leon charges forward with everything he's got. Blocking the hero hunter's furious strike with his sword, the two exchange lightning-fast blows as sparks of raw energy fly in every direction. With a precise, lethal maneuver, the terrifying goblin hunter is sliced clean in half. The adventurers erupt in cheers, seeing that the legendary paladin Leon successfully took down the raid boss. Suddenly, massive claws of dark energy manifest from the crimson sky, completely shifting the tide of the battle. The dark strike hits the ground with extreme violence, kicking up heavy dust and debris across the arena floor. Leon and Habiel look back startled as an immense, malicious presence begins to coalesce right before them. A macabre laugh echoes through the woods as a brand new monster spawns, sporting a terrifying grin. The new opponent roars with fury, brandishing its staff and summoning even more forces of darkness onto the field. Habiel panics, screaming to know what that thing is. While the paladin observes the threat with absolute seriousness, Leon points toward a massive black pillar, explaining that the structure is actively spawning the monster waves non-stop. He deduces there must be a glowing core hidden at the center of the pillar that needs to be shattered as soon as possible. The faction leaders muster up their courage, deciding they will destroy the core of evil no matter the cost. The paladin flashes a confident smile. Aligning with the incredible determination of his new companions under Leon's command, the party charges toward the massive black pillar to launch their final assault. A fresh horde of rabid goblins spawns to block their path in an extremely violent defensive maneuver. Leon spearheads the charge, channeling his holy power to carve a path directly through the center of the enemy army. He delivers a flashing strike with his lightning sword, shattering the monster's defense lines all at once. The blonde warrior decides to hold off the horde entirely on his own right in front of the pillar to buy time for his allies. He yells, telling the party to run, and the three faction leaders capitalize on the opening, charging forward with everything. A goblin leaps straight at Habiel, who attempts to guard by rapidly prepping her hunting bow. Leon lunges in just in time and parries the blow, saving the elf, but ends up taking a direct hit from the purple energy. The paladin cries out in pain as the malicious power of the strike corrupts a section of his metallic plate armor. Even wounded, he channels his remaining strength to deliver a counterstrike, throwing the monster backward. The hero drops to his knees completely spent, and the young elf screams in despair, watching him suffer so much in this fight. With blood dripping down his face, the paladin flashes a heroic smile and whispers, telling her to keep moving forward. The shield-wielding warrior leads the remaining survivors, charging toward the pillar while commanding everyone to push through, running completely out of mana to fight. One of the mages decides to make a final sacrifice play to clear the path for the squad. He triggers a massive mana explosion that wipes out multiple enemies, but drastically reduces the remaining pool of heroes. Habiel runs with heavy difficulty, feeling absolute physical exhaustion. But determined to complete Leon's final request, an absurd number of goblins keeps pouring out from the pillar, making the mission parameters look almost impossible down here. Seeing the critical state of the raid, the red-haired warrior orders her two remaining companions to charge straight for the objective. Habiel draws her bowstring back, concentrating her final drops of spiritual energy into one massive arrow. She releases her ultimate skill, triggering a literal downpour of glowing arrows against the surrounding monsters. The attack clears out the entrance of the pillar, defeating the final guards blocking the path of her allies. Completely exhausted, the elf collapses to the ground, smiling, telling her teammates to shatter the red core. Once and for all, multiple goblins leap right on top of the defenseless girl while she watches the absolute end of her character's health bar. With only two heroes left standing, the red-haired warrior yells out in pure fury, determined not to let the elf's sacrifice be in vain. She remembers the fall of her companions, swearing she will do absolutely everything to complete this legendary raid mission. The girl gains momentum and leaps toward the core with all the power and determination of a true vanguard warrior. Together, the red-haired warrior and the archer strike with absolute unity, lunging with full force toward the final objective. Both deliver a pinpoint, devastating blow directly against the shimmering red crystal embedded in the pillar. The power core begins to fracture under the violent impact of their combat weapons inside the arena. The crystal explodes into 1,000 shards, and the remaining survivors celebrate having successfully destroyed the core. However, a terrifying skeletal claw emerges from the ash, revealing that the raid boss battle is absolutely not over yet. The heroes take a step back in absolute shock as they feel a massive wave of malicious energy radiate from the green smoke. A terrifying skeleton wizard sporting glowing red eyes rises from the shadows, proclaiming that not a single one of them will step out of here alive.